The anime starts when the main character opens his eyes, clearly confused when he notices that he doesn't know where he is. A woman smiles at him, and he knows that she's his mother, but there's something that doesn't add up because he remembers that his mother was different. When he raises his hand, he realizes it's the hand of a baby, and he can barely move. He doesn't know what's going on, but he somehow can see his stats, and notices that his level has gone back to 1, and he has no name. His mother speaks to an old man as Her Majesty, which makes him think he might be an emperor. The emperor then decides to name him Noah Ararat, with the title of 13th Imperial Prince. Noah is surprised to see his own title, because that's a title given only to the son of an emperor, a noble among nobles. The emperor asks what his affinity is, and his servant, Cruz, tells him that it's water. The emperor then says that his fief will be Almeria, a land where many of the water clan reside. As soon as he says that, Noah sees that his stats changed, and his water affinity is now E+S. He doesn't understand what it means, because he's never seen values like these. With that matter settled, the emperor asks Cruz to show him his skills, so he casts an enchantment on Noah. That way, his stats are displayed to everyone in the room, and Noah is surprised to see that the value he saw has changed. His mother mentions that it's so much higher than when he was born, and Cruz says that this means he is already awakened. All the people witnessing are shocked, because no one has ever heard of anyone reaching SS at that age. Whatever the case, Noah just knows that he has been granted a new life and reincarnated as a noble. Mir's empire is a nation of warriors nestled in a craggy mountain range, and the capital is situated on an open plain. As it enjoys its golden age in which wealth begets wealth, a rich, resplendent culture now blooms in this nation. Its emperor is the father to over 10 sons known as the imperial princes, who are revered and adored by the people as the most renowned of nobles. 6 years after his reincarnation, Noah has realized something, and it's that everyone sees his stats differently. To everyone else, it looks like he's SS, but what he sees is that he's E+S. These are additions made by his subordinates, and the S added to water, for example, came from Almeria, the fief he was granted at birth, and the others came from his maids. In other words, he can grow stronger by gaining more subordinates, and his level apparently can be raised infinitely. Noah leaves his room after he's ready, and the maids praise him for his looks and behavior. After all, a boy his age would be full of mischief, but he is actually very calm and composed. Despite everything, Noah knows that his capabilities are quite limited at age 6. During breakfast, Evelyn, a beautiful maid who specializes in hospitality, informs him that the crown prince and the 4th prince have come to visit, but they say he can take his time eating before going to see them. Noah is sure that he most certainly can't do that, since it's the crown prince, so he decides to stop what he's doing and asks her to take him at once. Once in front of them, Noah kneels in respect to greet them, and meets the 2nd prince, Albert Ararat, a 29-year-old man who is the crown prince. The 4th prince, Henry Ararat, also greets him, mentioning that Noah is as courteous as ever, so he'll be a fine chancellor one day. Noah tells them that he will do his best to achieve that, and Albert tells him that they have a present for him today. He claps his hands twice, and the door suddenly opens, letting in a suspicious, dark aura. A man struggles to carry something that looks like a small coffin inside, and once he places it on the floor, Albert orders him to open it. Noah immediately perceives the screams and suffering from countless people in despair, begging Prince Albert to save them. All of these horrible things are coming from the sword in the coffin, and Noah doesn't know what to say. Albert simply asks him to pick it up, and Noah knows that he can't reject a gift from the crown prince, so he has no choice but to pick it up with both hands. He manages to lift it despite how heavy it is, and Albert is seemingly impressed, but not surprised. He mentions that the sword is called Leviathan. It is a water magic sword known as the strongest in the empire, and around 120 people have died trying to master it. Noah's grip falters when he hears that, and he panics when he almost drops the crown prince's gift. Henry asks him not to worry, and explains that those not meant to wield it are killed by its curse the moment they lift it. Albert tells him that, for most people, just carrying the box is agonizing, but apparently, one with water affinity at level SS can wield it. He thanks him before leaving, saying that this has been a valuable demonstration. Noah realizes that despicable crown prince was just testing him, and even though it makes him angry, he knows that he's dead if he says anything. Once they're outside, Henry asks Albert if that decision was wise, because that sword must be priceless. Albert tells him that it doesn't matter, because it's better off in the hands of someone as brilliant as Noah. Besides, it's precisely because he's so brilliant that he needs to experience being bitten by his own pet. That night, Noah notices that his personal maid, Zoe, has been acting a little off, so he asks her if anything's wrong since she looks clearly unhappy. Zoe apologizes and tries to avoid the subject, but Noah firmly insists, not giving her a choice. Zoe kneels before him and decides to be honest, telling him that she would like to request some time off. Noah asks her if something happened, and she informs him that there was a flood in her hometown recently. The farm where she grew up was washed out, and her mother, who lives alone, is now out of work. Zoe explains that her relatives have told her to work in the red light district, and they say that even she could sell herself as someone who served a prince. Noah stops her right there, saying that he's heard enough, and just like that, he decides that he will employ her mother at the mansion. He'll put her in charge of locking the rear gate, and he'll pay her 10 rien per month. Zoe is clearly surprised to hear that, because she has never heard of such a job, and that is far higher than the standard wage. Noah tells her that that there is an unused house in the western outskirts of the capital, so she and her mother can use it. After processing his words, Zoe quickly starts tearing up, feeling really grateful. Noah simply asks her to continue her work, because he knows that if he allows a former servant of his to work in the red light district, he'll sully the title of 13th Prince. Zoe is his servant, so she will serve him for life. Once that's settled, Noah calls his butler Dylan and asks him if he knew about the flood in Zoe's hometown Daso. Dylan tells him that he was aware, and Noah orders him to buy as much of the land there as possible. This surprises both Dylan and Zoe, so Noah explains that there will be villains trying to con people who've lost their livelihoods, like Zoe's family, out of their fortunes, so they must secure them before that happens. Dylan can't hide his surprise, saying that he wasn't expecting to see him handling a situation he's never experienced before with such foresight. Deep down, Noah knows that he saw more than his share of it before he reincarnated, but he clearly can't say something like that. Dylan asks him how he should procure the funds, because by his estimate, that would require approximately 700,000 rien. Now Zoe is the one who can't hide her surprise, but Noah doesn't blame her for that. After all, the average annual income of an adult man in the capital is 120 rien, and even his own retainers earn 8,000 rien per year. Adding in the tax revenue from Almeria and the monetary gifts from the emperor, the 13th prince's household has about 500,000 rien to work with, so that leaves 200,000 rien. Noah then mentions that they'll have to sell the land they own south of the capital. Dylan clearly wasn't expecting that order, because that land was a gift from the emperor, and to sell it without his permission would be a crime against the imperial family. Even so, Noah insists, saying that he will accept his father's reproach later. Dylan and Zoe try to make him change his mind, but Noah tells them that nobles have their obligations, and sometimes they must sacrifice themselves to bring happiness to as many of their people as possible. Playing the martyr is one of the privileges of the nobility, so he won't back down now. A little impressed, Dylan accepts his decision, willing to follow his orders, but before he can leave, he makes sure to thank him sincerely. Noah then remembers that Dylan also came from that same area, and that's why he feels so grateful. The next day, Zoe takes care of the preparations for their trip, and Henry decides to show up to see how Noah is doing. Noah and his maids immediately kneel before the fourth prince, and Henry asks him if he's going somewhere. Noah informs him that he's purchasing land in an area called Daso, which is flooded, so he's going to inspect it. Henry notices the coffin that contains the magic sword in one of the carriages, so he decides to speak to him alone and asks him if he's planning to use it. Noah denies it since he sensed some sort of power in it, but he hasn't felt it since then, so he's just taking it with him as a test. Henry tells him that since Albert said such strange things, he looked into it, and it seems that sword has a will of its own. Apparently, it only obeys the one it recognizes as its master. Noah quickly understands that he must earn its recognition, and all the pain and despair he sensed when he first saw the sword now makes sense, since it's like a mad dog. Henry tells him that he can carry it with him if he must, but he shouldn't use it, or else he'll die. Once that's clear, Noah finally leaves, and in no time, he's in Daso with his subordinates, seeing what's left after the flood. As soon as he takes a look at the place, he orders Dylan to go to the government office. After all, from the looks of it, he'd say most of the ruined homes lost their land deeds as well, so they will have to purchase them based on the government office's lists. Zoe is amazed that he ascertained that from just one look, and Noah asks Dylan to hurry, saying that he'll assume responsibility if anything happens. Dylan follows his orders and leaves, so Noah asks Zoe to accompany him, since he needs to know the lay of the land. After hiding their identities, the two of them enter the land, and Noah notices that the root vegetables have already started to rot, so there will be no harvest this year. Before they go any further, Zoe tries to warn him that this is dangerous, and he doesn't need to go this far. Noah tells her that if she insists on stopping him, then he'll sneak alone overnight. Just as she's about to protest, they hear a loud noise, and the people from Daso starts gathering. Zoe mentions that they're distributing food, so it looks like the Empire is doing its job. They decide to have a serving to inspect the food, but just looking at it already says a lot. It is so bland, and it's barely more than boiled water. But the worst part is that it tastes horrible, since it's already spoiled. Noah can't believe it is so bad, but an old man tells him that they can't ask for too much, because they're just lucky they get to eat, even if it's this, so they must accept it gratefully. Noah still thinks that it's unacceptable that the Empire is distributing food like this. Just then, the local government official, Lord Garrel, arrives to do an inspection, so Noah decides to observe quietly. The man takes a look at the pot, and even though the food looks and smells hideous, he confidently says that it looks all right. The cook laughs and thanks him for his praise, saying that his portion is ready in the mansion. Garrel seems satisfied enough, but that's when Noah decides to approach him, asking him if he's getting kickbacks for this. Garrel laughs smugly in his face, saying that he talks big even though he's such a little boy. He tells him that this is tough work for them too, so taking a little something in return is a privilege afforded to those of them who give so much. Garrel and his men laugh loudly, but Noah warns them that calling him a child is condescending, and getting rich off of rations intended for disaster victims is a crime. Garrel starts getting tired of him, so he draws his sword and threatens him, saying that to insult him is to insult Rowan, the ruler of this land. Noah interrupts him and tells him that tyrannizing the weak to curry favor with the strong is unacceptable. Noah asks him if he'd like to hear what his sentence is, but before Garrel can say anything, Noah tells him that it's death. As soon as he says that, Leviathan flies right into his hand, and he instantly can feel how strong it truly is. Despite this, he doesn't seem intimidated, and says that the strong only flaunt their power before the weak because they fear someone even stronger. Leviathan rages at that, and Noah tells it that if it was born strong, and if it succeeded in being born strong, then it must use that power for the good of the people, because that is his privilege as a noble. With that, he takes a hold of Leviathan and orders the sword to obey him. Once he masters the sword, Noah doesn't hesitate, and uses it to slice Garrel's head off his body. Garrel's subordinates immediately try to attack him, so Noah tries to defend himself. However, with just a swing of his sword, Leviathan lets out way too much power, and that opens a deep crater in the ground, one so deep he can't even see the bottom. Noah can tell that Leviathan truly is insane, and Garrel's subordinates instantly panic, running directly to the ruler of the land for help. Rowan Green, the knight captain who rules Dasso, sees Noah and immediately recognizes him. Without hesitation, he quickly kneels before him, apologizing for being unaware that the 13th prince was visiting. Rowan properly introduces himself and explains that he was only recently appointed to maintain security in this region, since he's a servant of Prince Henry's house. All the people around starts whispering things, so Rowan scolds them and lets them know that they're in the presence of the 13th prince. Almost instantly, everyone kneels before Noah, and he decides to inform Rowan that someone hired these food distributors for kickbacks. He already punished the man behind it all, so he wants him to deal the punishment deserved for his accomplices. They'll start over with the food distribution, so he needs them to add more to that soup, so much that he can stand a spoon in it and it won't fall. Rowan accepts his orders without a doubt, saying that he'll do it even if it costs him his life. The old man from before raises his head, realizing that they will actually get to eat proper food. Just hearing this makes all the people of Dasso cheer happily, revering the 13th prince with devotion. In no time, one of Albert's servants informs him about what happened in Dasso. Albert is clearly surprised that Noah not only didn't get bitten, but Leviathan actually submitted to him. That makes him believe that he may be even more useful than he thought. Soon after what happened, Noah is summoned by his father, the emperor, though it's nothing he wasn't expecting already. The emperor mentions that he heard the reports, so he knows that he sold the land he granted him and bought an entire village. Noah already saw this coming, so he prepares for the scolding of his life. However, instead of a severe reprimand, the emperor actually thanks him, saying that his efforts have prevented the emergence of anyone trying to take advantage of the flood. Were this natural disaster followed by a man-made disaster, they would have had to commit imperial resources to cleaning up the mess. The emperor asks him how he learned of this, and Noah tells him that it was coincidental, since one of his maids happens to be from that village. Even so, the emperor tells him that Providence also played a part, and he mastered a water magic sword in that village. Since it has been some time, the emperor says that he wants to see Noah's abilities again. Cruz casts his spell on him to show his stats, and just then, Noah realizes that it's not just human subordinates that can add to his stats, because the sword also counts. This isn't what he usually sees, and now, water is SSS with no plus sign to others, but to him, it's E plus SS. The emperor is clearly impressed by this, so he asks Noah to continue to aid him with his talents. In another scene, it is explained that the capital of the Mir's Empire is the center of the nation's government, the heart of its culture, and its financial center. Because of that, at some point, the people began to call it the most prosperous city in the world. Noah decides to visit that city, specifically Raid Street, because the eunuchs were saying there's a popular singer here. He gave Zoe more work to thank her for her help with her home village, so she's now accompanying him. After all, she does good work and pays attention to the smallest details, so she has really grown up. When they enter the place, Noah is surprised by the singer's voice, whose name is Alice. As she sings for the public, Noah admits that she isn't bad at all, and her technique has room for improvement, but he can tell that she sings earnestly and takes it seriously. She's clearly a conscientious girl, and he's actually enjoying her performance right now. However, the show gets suddenly interrupted by a group of thugs, who specifically approach Alice and ask her why she's wasting her time singing in here. The owner of the place tries to stop them, but one of the thugs pushes him away. He tells Alice that she isn't going to earn enough to pay off her father's debt that way. Alice tries to tell him that this is all she has, but the man harshly grabs her by her clothes and asks her not to make him explain the best way for a woman to make money. Noah decides to intervene, walking up to the stage and saying that the Article 2 of the Imperial Law says that it is illegal to make children assume their parents' debts. That's why making Alice repay her father's debt and ordering her to sell her body to do it is a crime. The man easily loses his patience and grabs him by the neck, asking him not to mess with him. Leviathan immediately acts up, hitting each one of the thugs with its power. Noah points the cursed sword at them and asks them if they wish to continue. But after going through that immense pain, the thugs decide to leave the place with a threat. Noah asks the owner to send those men to him if they ever return, and Zoe gives him a card with his information. That's when the owner finally finds out that Noah is the 13th prince, and everyone in the place is surprised. Ignoring their reaction, Noah tells Alice that her song was very nice and asks her how much her living expenses per month are. Alice explains that she also has her mother's treatment to pay for, so Noah offers her 25 rein, saying that he'll pay her that much every month so she can concentrate on singing, and he'll also increase the amount if she improves. Once she's out of her initial shock, Alice smiles and and thanks him, so Noah picks up her hat and asks her to let him hear how the song ends. When Noah returns to the palace, he notices a group of men outside the gates, and Evelyn informs him that they called themselves lenders and said that they wanted to apologize to him. Noah realizes that they're the group of thugs from before and assumes that they finally learned who he was. He simply asks Evelyn to send them away and to tell them that a prince is not someone they can just see whenever they want. Evelyn follows his orders, and Henry praises him for handling the situation that way. After all, granting an audience to men like them without a second thought would devalue the standing of royalty and his princedom. Noah admits that that's also true, but he mentions that he actually had another reason. Once they go inside, he explains the situation, saying that he wants to aid a singer. That's why he felt that letting the thugs think that he was still angry would stop them from bothering her any further. Henry tells him that he's impressed he could think that far ahead at his age, because Frank and Gary are closer to his age, but they don't think that way. They're all still kids after all, especially Gary, who still hasn't learned his manners despite all the teaching he receives. Noah knows that even though they may be his brothers, they have different mothers. However, since Henry and Gary have the same mother, he supposes that they have a different sort of connection. Leaving that aside, Henry decides to talk about his magic sword, since it seems like he's managed to master it. Noah tells him that it's thanks to him, because he was right when he told him that the sword has its own will. Henry then asks him how he carries it around, because the sword is too big for him. Noah clarifies that it actually isn't, and decides to give him a demonstration by materializing the sword in his hand. Henry jumps from his seat, clearly taken off guard, and Noah explains that the sword was hidden in his sleeve. He makes Leviathan transform into a tiny sword, saying that that's how he keeps it in his sleeve all the time. Noah explains that Leviathan taught him that itself, and Henry simply tries to process that information. After all, that thing was isolated as a national treasure for 2 centuries, and even the records from before then mentioned nothing of the sort. That night, Noah decides to show him where the thugs are outside the palace, but they have clearly lost all their patience after being there all day. One of them finally snaps as soon as he sees Noah and asks him to stop ignoring them. His comrades try to stop him from talking any further, but the man threatens him, saying that he'll kill him anytime and any place. With only one look, Noah paralyzes him, so the others finally manage to take him down. Henry asks him what he did this time, and Noah explains that he unleashed just a tiny bit of Leviathan's power and used it to threaten them. Later in the evening, Noah attends a celebration led by a man named Raydock and is received with a round of applause. Everyone's excited to see the 13th prince, mentioning that he looks so dignified for such a young boy. Raydock asks Noah what the thing at his waist is, and Noah informs him that it's a gift from the crown prince, a sword called Leviathan. Everyone goes silent at that, clearly surprised that he's carrying a national treasure around. Soon enough, the people start whispering things, but one man laughs and says that it's probably just a toy replica. However, when Noah looks at him, he realizes his mistake and quickly tries to play it off, pretending he didn't say anything. It's way too late though, and Leviathan decides to release a small part of its power, flooding the room with a dark aura. Some people are unable to breathe, and they start going insane at the sickening sensation, so Noah asks Leviathan to stop. The room quickly goes back to normal, and Noah understands that Leviathan was angry because its master was insulted. He mentions that he appreciates its loyalty, but clarifies that that was too much. Raydock applauds him and tells him that that was impressive, and he's sure everyone here felt very close to death for a moment there. That is the real power of a national treasure, and he won control of that overwhelming power. All the people finally start recognizing Noah's power, and he quickly gains their respect as the 13th imperial prince. Another round of applause follows, and Raydock asks Noah what they should do about the man who insulted him. Noah simply asks him to leave him be, because he has nowhere left to turn anyway. One by one, all the people start introducing themselves to the prince, and Noah greets them politely. Lance Rawlinson, the traitor, introduces himself and tells him that he can't thank him enough for the honor of this opportunity he has granted them. After him follows Byron Allen, the head of the Allen Company, and his daughter, Cindy Allen. After they introduce themselves, Noah asks Byron if his daughter is adopted, and Allen is surprised that he knew about that. Noah clarifies that he can tell by looking, and he knows that Allen is the 2nd or 3rd generation. His bearing is that of one who was born into a high rank, but his daughter lacks that. What's more, he also can tell that he took in a former slave as his daughter. The moment she felt flustered, she gave Noah an inquiring look, and that's a look unique to people who have been slaves. Allen quickly kneels before him and tells him that he's correct, because he originally bought Cindy as a slave, but she learns very fast, so he's been teaching her as his adopted daughter. Noah smiles approvingly, saying that he loves stories like that, so he'll invite them to his mansion sometime because he'd like to hear more about her. This surprises everyone around, so Allen accepts and knows that it is already time to leave. Raydock mentions that he's a clever man, because if he stayed any longer, he would invite too much envy. After all, he was the first one to be acknowledged by the prince. Noah tells him that there's another reason he could tell Cindy wasn't his real daughter, and it's because she's been protecting Allen since the first time he used the sword as a threat. A girl her age would normally be protected herself, but this is not the case. Raydock admits that it was very perceptive of him to see that from the start, and he couldn't be more impressed today. The next day, as Noah is walking through the city, he runs into one of his brothers, the 8th prince, Oscar Ararat. Noah tells him that he was just taking a stroll, and Oscar finds it interesting that he's doing it without a carriage. Since he seemingly has nothing to do, Oscar asks him to join him in a treasure hunt. Noah accepts, and the two of them go to Cobalt Street, where antiques from all over the Empire can be found. Oscar mentions that they can find plenty of counterfeits as well, so finding the real treasures among them is something any noble should be able to do. After spending the day looking for treasures, Oscar gives up and tells him that they failed today. Even thought they had no luck at all, Noah decides to buy a book for 3 rein, only because it made him a bit curious. When Oscar sees the book in his hands, he's surprised to see that it's the original grimoire of Andrea, the legendary sorcerer. That's a genuine treasure, and depending on what's in it, he could get 1,000 rein for it. Oscar asks him how he knew what it was, but Noah actually didn't know. However, the moment he touched it, a plus was added to his win stat, and he only bought it for that. Leviathan reacts to the grimoire, so Noah points the sword at the book, knowing that only beings with their own will can add to his stats, which means this book has something in it. A dark aura comes out of it, and when the grimoire falls on the ground, it opens in a specific page, activating a magic circle. The dark aura that comes out of it becomes much stronger, and Oscar quickly realizes that it is a forbidden tome with the sorcerer's soul sealed inside. He asks Noah to run, and explains that that's the vengeful spirit of the great sorcerer who mastered wind. Noah doesn't move from his place, standing firm as he uses Leviathan against the spirit, creating a powerful torrent of water. Noah notices a change in his stats, but he ignores it to make sure that his brother is alright. Oscar is simply surprised that he didn't cause any damage to the city with that attack, since he aimed it upward, and he can't believe that he was able to make that call in a mere instant. A man suddenly approaches them and informs them that he runs an antique shop on this street. He introduces himself as Alan Bardsley, and says that having witnessed the prince's remarkable feat, he has an article that he would like him to see. Since he's talking about a possible treasure, Noah and Oscar decide to follow him to his shop. Alan then shows them a ring that will only show its true form when its true owner appears. H explains that he has shown it to many people, but it never responds to any of them. Noah asks him if it isn't just trash in that case, and Alan tells him that he thought so himself and tried to get rid of it many times, but it always comes back for some reason. Once he gets rid of it, it's always back in his store before he knows it, so he is quite certain there is something to it. Oscar mentions that it sounds interesting, so he asks Noah to try it on to see what happens. Noah accepts and tries it on, and the ring almost immediately starts glowing red, confirming his level limit. Noah is surprised to hear the voice that comes from the ring, which tells him that the rarity is SSS, and he has been recognized as the new owner. The ring suddenly transforms into an armor, and Noah quickly checks his stats, but sees no change in them. It's not the same sort of being as that grimoire or Leviathan, but it seems to have many uses, so he decides to take it. Noah tells Alan that he'll take the ring, saying that he'll have payment sent to him later. Oscar quickly jumps in and offers to pay it for him, asking him to consider it as a gift from him. Noah can't say no to that, and Oscar mentions that he first got a magic sword, and now he has a magic armor, so there really is something different about him. The two of them finally leave after that, and Oscar leaves Noah with Zoe, though he asks him if he doesn't want him to take him home. Noah politely declines the offer, saying that someone is coming for him. Just as they're about to say goodbye, the man from before suddenly lunges at Noah, trying to kill him with a sword. Zoe quickly gets in the way to protect him, but Noah activates his ring, creating a shield to block the attack. The carriage driver jumps at the man to hold him down, and Oscar asks Noah to explain what he did. Noah tells him that he linked the ring he gifted him with Leviathan, so it seems to have reacted to his hostility with automatic defense. Oscar then realizes that he has already mastered it, which is truly incredible to him. After dealing with that man, Noah decides to go to Raid Street again to see Alachi's performance. That man is already done for after he attacked him, so he's planning to tell her later so she doesn't worry anymore. However, it seems that there are more things she can worry about, since a drunk man suddenly gets on stage and approaches her, asking her to let him pour her a drink. Before Alachi can decline the offer, another drunk man gets on stage as well and fights him, saying that he saw her first. Just as they're about to throw hands, Noah gets on stage and creates another shield with his ring, stopping his fists at the same time. Knowing that it's still not enough, he uses Leviathan to give them an electric shock, so the men quickly run away from the place. The owner approaches him to apologize, but Noah simply asks him not to let guys like them in here anymore. The owner tells him that it is customers like them who keep his business alive, so there's nothing he can do about it for the sake of his business. Noah quickly understands the situation and tells him that he will purchase his business in that case. As soon as he says the word, Zoe immediately gives the owner a bag of money. Noah tells him that he's buying the business for 1,000 rein and asks him if that covers it. After snapping out of his shock, the owner instantly agrees, almost overwhelmed, and thanks him for saving him like that. Once that's settled, Alachi approaches Noah and tells him that she doesn't know how to repay him for doing all of this for her. Noah tells her that she just has to sing, because what he wants from her is her music, and that is why all she needs to do is keep singing. Alachi asks him if he really likes her singing that much, and Noah confirms it, saying that he can see her potential. He also tells her that he wants the Emperor to hear her sing one day, so she has to devote herself to singing until that happens. Alachi is clearly moved by his words, and she can't even hold her tears of happiness anymore, but she gladly accepts. Noah finally goes back to his seat next to Zoe, and Alachi walks back on stage to continue her performance, like she always does. Once the public is quiet quiet enough, she asks everyone to listen to one more song of hers. This time, she gives it the best she has and sings for everyone with emotion, wanting to do better every time. Noah quietly listens to her melodic voice with a smile and confirms that his judgment was truly spot on in this case, because even after everything he saw that day, he knows that this right here is the real treasure he was looking for. Some days after that, Evelyn informs Noah that he has a guest, and it's dead Marley, Governor General of Holjoy. Noah remembers him as that up-and-comer from his fief, so he orders to let him in, saying that he'll be right there in no time. It is explained that the royal family has a custom of granting fiefs to princes so that they can learn about government affairs. For that reason, the people of each fief revere the prince serving as their lord as if he were a monarch. Dead Marley, who was born in Almeria but now works in a land called Holjoy, is no exception. He kneels before Noah and introduces himself, saying that it is truly a pleasure to stand in his royal presence. Noah asks him to have a seat, saying that there's no need for such formalities, since this is the second time they've met. Marley affirms this because he actually introduced himself to him about a year and a half ago when the emperor appointed him as governor general. Noah asks him how things have been going since he was given an imperial order to manage flood control in Holjoy. Marley doesn't have to say a word because just his expression is enough to let him know that it isn't going well. Holjoy is a fertile grain-producing region in the bend of a large river, but it suffers from flooding on occasion. The emperor appointed Marley of Almeria, the home of the Water Clan, to govern it in hopes that he could stabilize it. Noah asks him what the problem is, and Marley explains that they haven't received any funding, and they can't use money they don't have. Noah tells him that he should have some funding, because it was an imperial order. Marley explains that the home ministry keeps coming up with excuses, so there's nothing they can do about it. Noah quickly understands what's going on, so he stands up and asks Marley to follow him. In no time, he visits Maverick, the Minister of Finance, and mentions that Marley told him that he's been delaying the distribution of his funds. Of course, Maverick denies this, and clarifies that there's a very good reason for not giving him the money. Noah immediately asks him to be silent if he's going to say that a child wouldn't understand. Maverick is taken by surprise, so he quickly lies and tells him that he wouldn't say something so rude. Noah then asks him to explain himself, and Maverick tells him that Holjoy suffered flood damage yet again last year. Their kind emperor's heart hurts so badly that he granted them a whole year of tax exemption, which means they have leftover tax money, and it is the Ministry of Finance's opinion that they should use that. After hearing that poor excuse, Noah asks him if he's belittling him, and that shocks both Maverick and Marley. Noah states once again that Holjoy had a flood, and the emperor gave them a tax exemption because they had no money to pay. It was kind of him, but that itself is the core of the issue, and he's talking as if they have that money, which makes him wonder if he's belittling him. Maverick quickly stands up in panic and clarifies that that's not what he meant. He nervously explains that he can't send them money right now because of the plan to build the emperor's summer retreat. The emperor is not young anymore, so he should spend his summers not in the hot capital, but in a land that's just a little bit cooler. However, although it's only a retreat, it is for the emperor's use, so naturally, it will be a royal villa. In short, they must build a city that he can call his villa, and that requires a vast amount of money. Marley feels frustrated because if he's bringing the emperor into this, there's no way to refute. Despite this, Noah instantly asks Maverick to be silent and warns him that he's committing a grave crime against the royal family. To say that a flooded region needs flood control, but he's building a villa so he can't spare the money, makes him think that he's taking his father for a fool. Maverick panics once again, completely terrified this time, as he tries to tell him that he misunderstands. He quickly gets on his knees, saying that he meant nothing of the sort, and this is clearly a misunderstanding. Noah asks him to distribute the funds in that case, or he'll have to go and appeal to the emperor himself. Maverick immediately tells him that there's no need for that, because he will supply Holjoy with funding right away, and it will get top priority. Marley stares at the whole thing in shock, realizing just how amazing Noah is, because he got the Minister of Finance to yield without lifting a finger. Without hesitation, Marley tells him that he has his utmost admiration and that the way he negotiates is brilliant. He caught him in his gaffes and contradictions with his verbal mastery, so he's ashamed that he was foolish enough to put him in this position. Noah then understands that Marley thought that because he's a prince, he could use him to force his demands through. Right after the issue is solved, Marley hurries back to proceed with the flood control measures. Noah is summoned by the emperor right after that, so he hurries to see his father. The emperor tells him that he can relax, and decides to start by saying that he did a good job about Holjoy because he heard that he thoroughly routed Maverick. Noah is clearly surprised by that because that only just happened, but he already knows about it. The emperor tells him that information is a weapon, and one he should make a habit of keeping polished. Noah agrees, but clarifies that he only did what anyone would have done. His father admits that he's right, but tells him that what comes naturally does not come easily. There are many slick tongues out there who know how to use flattery, and not many people can do the right thing with natural ease. The emperor places a hand on top of Noah's head, saying that it's most impressive for a boy of only 6. When Noah is asked to stand up, the emperor can see what Leviathan looks like now, and it truly is smaller. Noah then confirms that his own mansion is also within the emperor's information network. The emperor tells him that the idea that he has fully mastered that magic sword, considering its dark history, can only be described as remarkable. Noah knows that if he hadn't stopped Leviathan back then, then, it would have killed everyone in that market, so it's clearly a dark history indeed. His father mentions that it would serve him well to learn the techniques to wield it, so he summoned an instructor of swordsmanship. Just then, a man named Damien Noble introduces himself, and the Emperor informs Noah that he's the Empire's greatest swordsman. It is said that there are none who can match him, so he must learn from him. Damien stands up and tells the Emperor that he would like to request a bout right away. Even though Noah is a child who still knows nothing, he only wants to observe his aptitude, not his technique. The Emperor accepts, so Noah already knows that Damien clearly has his father's trust. Damien wields his massive sword and asks Noah to come at him however he sees fit. Noah grabs Leviathan, and for some reason, the sword strangely reacts, but he still charges at Damien with no hesitation. After the first attack, Leviathan's memories start flowing into him, and it's the memories of all its past owners. Thanks to that, he manages to fight Damien, and even leaves him disarmed in a matter of seconds. Noah realizes that Leviathan truly is a magic sword that chooses its own master, and its previous owners must have been very skilled as well. Damien kneels before the Emperor and apologizes, saying that he has nothing to teach the prince. His strength and speed are indeed those of a child, but he used technique alone to disarm him. The prince already possesses the swordsmanship skill of a master, so it would be presumptuous of him to try to teach him, and he's soundly defeated. The Emperor quickly understands the situation, and he soon starts laughing with joy, saying that that was impressive, and Noah truly is something. That's why he decides that he'll make him head judge in this year's knight selection exam, because there is no one better suited for the job. Noah gladly accepts, saying that he will see this task through. The knight selection exam is an annual event involving participants from all corners of the empire. For this empire, a nation of warriors that treasures its military, it is said that the way of the warrior is the only path to success by merit. In the exam, the fighters who win their regional preliminaries meet in the capital for their final battles. The one who emerges victorious earns the title of knight and immediately joins the upper ranks of society. The first job of the new knight is to become a subordinate of the head judge, and Noah knows that with a talented knight in his service, he could become even stronger. The Emperor then asks how Noah will judge this event, and Damien explains that it'll be by either round robin or elimination, which is the first thing the head judge must decide. Noah says that he has one request, because he wants to do away with the regional preliminaries and do all the judging here in the capital before his own eyes. After all, the empire is vast, and he can't observe all the preliminaries in every region. He wouldn't want any strong candidates to be excluded for arbitrary reasons, and he doesn't want to overlook any talent. The Emperor easily accepts his request, asking him to do as he pleases. Soon after that, Noah asks Zoe if there are any knight selection exam participants in her village. Zoe confirms this, saying that there's one who is their simple village's lone gateway to glory, and the only one their village sends to the exam every year. Noah then tells her that he did away with the regional preliminaries this year, so they can send more if they like. Zoe hesitates for a moment, and tells him that it's nothing of consequence, but the reason their village sends only one challenger is that they can't afford the travel and lodging expenses. Everything costs more in the capital, so it takes donations from all of them just to send one. That one ends up shouldering all of the village's hopes, so they all get very serious about it. Noah doesn't need to hear anything else, and decides that he will do away with that too. After all, he wants to choose from among as many as possible, and he can't overlook any talent for such a reason. That's why he will cover all the travel and lodging expenses, so all challengers can participate. Zoe is taken by surprise, and she assures him that that would make everyone in their village very happy, but it would surely cost a great deal of money. Noah tells her that it doesn't mean arranging everything from nothing, and he asks Dylan to find out how many vacant houses are in the capital, because he wants to buy them all. It's great if that's enough, but if it isn't, they'll build a dormitory of sorts to fix the problem. Noah also asks him to talk to all the merchants they have connections with, and says that he'll go out of town as well. Soon enough, Noah meets with Byron Allen, but he's not satisfied with his estimate, because they're talking about food for the duration of the exam, and his estimate would leave him with a deep deficit. Byron doesn't deny it, but clarifies that this is a request from the 13th prince himself. Noah tells him that he knows that he's lying, because merchants don't give money away out of mere compassion. Without beating around the bush, he asks him what he wants from him, and Byron is surprised that a boy his age, and a noble at that, understands the world so well. Noah tells him that it's more like using money wastefully is part of his job. Byron admits that he never ceases to amaze him, and he finally decides to tell him what he wants. He mentions that there is a palace employment exam, run on roughly the same scale as the knight selection exam. That's why he was hoping he would know what sorts of people are hired. Noah quickly understands that he wants to put a girl in the palace, because if he had the support of someone in the palace, he'd be the first to hear any new information, and if she were to be ordered to spend nights with the emperor as a consort, the profits would be immeasurable. Byron quickly tells him that this has nothing to do with what he's asked of him, and he has already sent a token of his gratitude to his mansion. Noah admits that he's smart for sending advance payment, but he decides to give him one condition. If it's a girl he likes, he'll put in a good word, but it must be a girl he sincerely approves of. Byron thanks him and assures him that he will choose one who measures up to his standards. Just then, he kneels in front of him, saying that for a man like him, his kindness and keen perception elevate above all others, so he'd like him to allow him to add add the crest of the 13th prince to his store sign. Noah asks him if he will fully devote himself to his service, and both Byron and Cindy agree. Noah finally accepts, but he warns them that he will not tolerate betrayal. That night, he realizes that accepting Byron as a subordinate increased his stats, so if he keeps this up, he can get even stronger. Noah notices that one of his stats went down, and the SS on water is gone, which means something happened in Almeria. He immediately tells Zoe that he's going to see the Emperor, so she must tell the driver that they're heading for the palace now. Once in front of the Emperor, Noah informs him that there's been a change in Almeria. His father asks him how he found out, and Noah assumes that he knows about it. However, the Emperor clarifies that he merely noticed the signs. Noah tells him that what the signs indicated has indeed come to pass, and just then, a servant approaches the Emperor to inform him about something. Once he hears the news, the Emperor tells Noah that he truly is impressive because something indeed happened, and there has been a rebellion in Almeria. The Emperor asks him how large he believes it is, and Noah considers the fact that his SS just dropped to S, so it might look like it dropped by half. However, it only went down by one rank out of several, which means that it's a small scale at the moment. He decides to give that answer, and the Emperor tells him he's correct, because the report identified 5,000 rebels. Their numbers are low, and it's in his fief, so he wants to know if he has any intention of putting it down himself. Noah tells him that that's impossible, unfortunately, because he's still young and unfamiliar with combat. He doesn't know whether the soldiers would listen to him, so if they're to send a prince to subjugate it, he thinks it should be one of his older brothers. The Emperor wasn't expecting that answer, since he looked at the situation so objectively before refusing. Seemingly pleased, he decides to stand by Noah's judgment and choose another. He also asks him if there's one he would recommend, and Noah tells him that, of the princes, he believes Henry is the best choice. After all, with such low numbers, the orthodox approach is to suppress them head-on. As the most prudent of his brothers, he believes Henry is up to the task in this case. The Emperor tells him that he made a fine choice, and decides to summon Henry right away. Soon after, Henry is in a carriage with Noah and asks him if he's really sure about this, because it could have been his chance. The Empire is a nation of warriors, so a great achievement in battle now could benefit him later. Noah tells him that he is not well learned enough for such a sudden deployment, so even if he survived, many soldiers would likely die in vain. Henry mentions that he's calm and collected as ever, but just then, Noah senses a warning from Leviathan. He immediately knows that the enemy is here, so he orders stopping the carriage. Leviathan reacted to them, so it's him they're after, and he can't get his brother involved. Once the carriage stops, Noah jumps out of it, using Leviathan and his ring to surround himself with shields and block the sudden water attack that strikes him. The enemies are all water users, so Noah already knows that they're the Almeria rebels, and he uses Leviathan to take them all down. Once it's all over, Henry approaches the corpses, saying that it would have been useful to interrogate them. He had heard that the rebel army was centered around cavalrymen, but they apparently also had people like these. Noah clarifies that he didn't kill them, and explains that after cutting them down, he used Leviathan's threat to knock them unconscious, because people like these are too likely to take their own lives. Henry confirms that they're all breathing, and Noah tells him that he will let him handle them. The next day, Noah decides to meet with Byron, since he does business in the area surrounding Almeria as well. Before saying anything, Noah warns him that he can consider himself dead if he tells anyone this. Only then, he mentions that there's been a rebellion in Almeria, and he's been told that cavalrymen are the center of their forces. Noah gives him 10,000 rein and asks him to purchase all the horse feed in the fief immediately. Byron accepts his order at once, asking him if he should secure the standard rations as well. Noah tells him that they don't need them, because war horses are not raised in Almeria. According to his brother, the rebels' horses were purchased elsewhere, and there's only so much horse feed they could steal from citizens. Byron quickly understands that if they took the soldiers' rations, they'd start looting, which is truly a brilliant reasoning, and he decides to get started at once. The Emperor summons Noah soon after finding out what happened, and mentions that he was told that the assassins gave them useful information. The rebels apparently were trying to kidnap him as a bargaining chip. Noah mentions that it sounds like they gave in rather easily, so it's possible they're lying. The Emperor recognizes how clever he is, but he asks him not to worry, saying that there is a way to find out if one is speaking the truth. Noah knows that it takes a thief to catch a thief, but he's not knowledgeable in the ways of torture, so he'll just take his word for it. His father tells him that he did a good job, because if he had been captured, the Empire would have been forced to make a difficult choice. He also mentions that setting his sights on their horses was brilliant. That takes Noah by surprise, because he only just now gave the order to buy up all the horse feed. This has happened before, but not this quickly, so it doesn't fail to surprise him. The Emperor says that anyone could have had the idea to use starvation tactics, and in fact, Albert had just suggested starving the rebels to make examples of them. However, Noah realized that it could cause them to attack their people, and chose to starve only their horses, with his own funds, no less. The Emperor kneels to place a hand on Noah's shoulder, saying that his ideas and ability to act on them are truly most impressive, and that is not an easy thing to accomplish. Noah is really surprised by his praise, so he makes sure to thank him, and his father tells him that he must reward him somehow. After thinking about it for a bit, he decides to permit the addition of a sword to Noah's crest. That shocks Noah even more, because the Empire is a nation of warriors, so adding a sword, the symbol of a warrior, to one's crest without the the Emperor's permission is sacrilege, and it may even be punished by death. On the other hand, being granted the Emperor's permission to add one is among the greatest honors one can earn. The Emperor asks Cruz to issue the proclamation, and Noah thanks him for all of this. Later that day, Byron meets Noah to inform him that there are only so many types of feed designed to be transported, and they know the route used to bring it in, so it won't be difficult to buy up all of it. Byron also mentions that Carfun, the leader of the rebels, is extremely tenacious and will do whatever it takes to achieve his goal. He's certain it's nothing he needs to worry about, but he should be careful either way. Evelyn suddenly interrupts them to inform Noah that there's a wounded man at the main gate who says he has an urgent report. Noah decides to go see what's going on right away, and he sees a wounded knight who kneels in front of him, saying that he serves as a decurion in the province of Adora in Almeria. He informs him that a rebellion has begun in Almeria, and his superior started an uprising, but he couldn't go along with it, so he fled to report to him. Byron sees that that was the urgent report, but unfortunately for that man, the prince already knew of it. However, Noah still thanks the man for informing him, and asks Evelyn to treat his wounds. Before leaving, he also asks her to give him a reward of 1,000 reen. That takes Byron by surprise, so he asks Noah what that was all about, because the information he brought isn't even useful to him anymore. Noah admits that that's true, but a mere decurion came here to inform him, despite the danger, so he has to reward his loyalty. Byron then understands that's why he promised him so much money, and Noah confirms it, also saying that he thinks he's worth it. Later that day, Zoe visits Noah's office, and he immediately notices how pale she looks. Zoe falls on her knees and nervously gives him a bag of money that looks to be around 500 reen. She explains that someone she didn't know gave it to her as a reward for getting him to drink a sleeping drug. Zoe gives him the small jar, and Noah quickly understands that she was supposed to mix it into his drink and then hand him over to them once he fell asleep. That makes him know that it's the rebels acting up again, which means that they truly want him. He asks her why she brought this to him, and Zoe tells him that she could never betray him because he helped her mother and her village. She soon starts crying, saying that they told her that she'd be killed if she didn't do what they wanted, but she just couldn't betray him either way. Noah easily understands the situation and decides to give her a reward, saying that they tried to buy her betrayal for 500 reen, but she didn't do it, so he'll add a 0 to that and give her 5,000. Zoe clearly wasn't expecting that, and she tries telling him that she can't accept this much, but Noah insists and asks her to take it. Zoe cries even more and accepts the money gratefully, saying that he is truly a generous master. Noah quickly moves on and tells her that there's something he wants her to do. Zoe is completely willing to do anything he asks, but she's surprised when Noah tells her that he's going to drink the sleeping drug, and when he falls asleep, he wants her to take him to them. And then, he wants her to run and hide immediately, because they'll try to silence her if she sticks around. Zoe doesn't understand what he's planning, but soon enough, Noah wakes up somewhere else, hearing a conversation from the rebels. One of them complains about the job, saying that one stab with that creepy little dagger would be enough for all of this to be over. The other rebel reminds him that that's supposed to be a last resort, and says that they can't go wrong if they do what Carfun says. Noah knows that they're his captors for sure, but he still doesn't know what his situation is. He soon finds out that he's bound at the hands and feet, of course, but he was right to hide his weapon in his ear because they would have taken it otherwise. They also didn't take his ring, and thanks to that, he can easily cut the ropes and set himself free. Once his eyes properly adjust in the dark, he realizes that he isn't in a room but the back of a wagon. Since he was completely unconscious during everything, Noah asks Leviathan to show him its memories. The sword instantly responds and shows him that a group of rebels broke into his office as soon as he passed out. Zoe ran away without hesitation, just like he told her to do, and the rebels had no time to chase after her because they had to get Noah out before the guards caught on. They immediately took him to the back of the wagon and escaped without wasting any time. Noah understands the situation after seeing Leviathan's memories, so he finally stands up and faces the rebels with his sword. None of them see him as a threat, of course, and they're just annoyed at whoever tied him up so poorly. Noah takes a step closer, so one of the rebels draws his sword as a warning and tells him that his big brother saved him last time, but a kid like him can't do anything against them alone. Before he can finish his sentence, Noah slashes him with Leviathan, taking his life in an instant. Noah mentions that this is truly a waste of time, because he was hoping he'd get some useful information, but they're just lackeys. The rebels immediately draw their swords against him, but Noah fights each one of them with ease, taking them down one by one. By the time he's done, Zoe arrives with a group of knights to rescue him, and Noah asks her what this means. Zoe nervously apologizes, saying that she knows that he asked her to hide, but she was worried about him, so she came to save him, though it looks like he already took care of the situation. Noah speaks to the captain of the knights and asks him to take care of these rebels, because they're with the ones who attacked him a few days ago. The captain quickly follows his orders, and a dagger falls from one of the bodies. Before he can pick it up, Noah immediately asks him not to touch that, and orders everyone to step back. Once they do, he observes the weapon up close, and realizes that this is the dagger the rebels were talking about. There's clearly a lot of malice in it, and through Leviathan, he can sense a curse on it too. It's filled with the hatred of the one who cursed it, and for a moment, Noah can even see the face of that person. Everyone keeps their distance as Noah decides what to do, and he asks Leviathan if it can do this, saying that it should be easy for for a water magic sword like it. The sword responds by showing him a pair of fierce glowing eyes, so Noah asks Leviathan to show him. Leviathan releases its power right then, shooting a powerful water attack that crosses the sky and reaches the person who cursed that dagger, hitting the leader of the rebels in an instant. The next morning, the Emperor praises Noah once again, saying that last night, the leader of the rebels was pierced through the brow by a pillar of water that appeared out of nowhere. He knows that it was his doing, and he had his magic sword do it, no less. Noah confirms this, not surprised that his father found out so soon this time. He used the hatred in the dagger to guide Leviathan to the rebel leader with a long-distance sniping shot, and it seemed like it worked. After that, the Almerian rebels, having lost their leader, were quickly suppressed by 4th Prince Henry. Nearly all those involved in plotting the uprising have been arrested, so the Emperor's judgment is requested in deciding their punishment. The Emperor attends the audience and orders to ready the horses and cattle because every last one of them will be drawn and quartered. Everyone considers that an excellent judgment, and the Emperor tells Noah that they will pay at once for the crime of launching a rebellion in his fief. Noah kneels before him and suddenly asks him not to do that, which clearly surprises everyone. The Emperor asks him the meaning of this, and Noah explains that they must be punished in accordance with the law. According to imperial law, rebel leaders are to be cut in half at the waist, third-degree supporters and accomplices are to be hanged, and any others are to be beheaded for participating. Even if drawn and quartered is simply idiomatic, no such punishment exists in the laws of this empire. The Emperor reminds him that these people sullied his name, but Noah warns him that if the Emperor takes the initiative in breaking the law, it can throw his supremacy into disarray, so he wants him to reconsider. The room falls silent as the Emperor gives it some thought, and everyone is clearly tense as they wait for him to speak. Finally, the Emperor admits that Noah's logic is sound, and he's done well to catch him in his mistake. However, a tame punishment will not satisfy him, so he must punish them to the fullest extent of the law, and there will be no commutations. Noah seems to be okay with that, so the Emperor speaks to the first Prime Minister, Noijil, and tells him that he'll let him handle this. Everyone in the audience is truly impressed by the 13th Prince, because he was brave enough to admonish the Emperor like that and without the slightest change in his expression. They're now sure that his genius is truly a gift from the heavens, so he's a remarkable child prodigy indeed, with a really strong conviction. The Emperor stands up and tells Noah that he has stopped him from sullying this empire's good name in history, so he must reward him somehow. He claps his hands once and announces that he will grant him a title, because any of his children may be capable of simply admonishing him, but to do so rightly is a valuable talent, and to make his cleverness known to all his subjects, he'll grant him the title Wise. Everyone's surprised to know that the prince has a title now, because this has never happened before. Noah quickly checks his stats and sees that his title of 13th Imperial Prince has changed to Wise Prince, so he thanks his father for that. The Emperor tells him that if only he had been born a bit earlier, things would have been truly different. That statement alone surprises all his subjects, because they know what it means for the Emperor to say that. While everyone cheers for the prince, the Emperor informs Noah that the knight selection exam is soon, so he wants to know if he has decided how he will judge it. Noah mentions that he has a plan and asks him if he can show him after this audience. The Emperor accepts the invitation, so Noah tells him everything about it right after the audience ends. He decides to do a demonstration and asks Cruz to throw a bucket of water at him. As soon as he does, Noah's ring immediately activates and creates a shield that keeps the water from touching him. 3 other men also throw buckets of water at him at the same time, but Noah doesn't move an inch and remains completely dry either way, calmly enjoying a cup of tea. There's no need for him to say a word, because the Emperor seems to understand. Noah explains himself anyway, saying that he will have the participants attack him in this way and judge them based on how close their attacks get to him. The Emperor tells him that that's brilliant, as usual, because this reduces the burden on him and eases the judgment process. However, it is not without its risks, since if any contender is powerful enough to break through his defenses, he could get harmed. Noah clarifies that he is prepared to deal with that, and the Emperor is clearly pleased to hear his determination, saying that that's what makes him his son, an imperial prince, and now the Wise Prince. Noah thanks him once again, and later that day, the Emperor decides to meet with the first Prime Minister, Noijil. As they walk through the castle, Noijil asks the Emperor if he doesn't think that saying that if only Noah had been born earlier before the public was a bit much. That was clearly a very strong statement for all his subjects, but the Emperor simply laughs, saying that he doesn't see the issue at all. After all, Noah not only admonished him, but he took out an enemy leader without even going to the battlefield, which is truly unprecedented. He stops for a moment and tells Noijil that besides that, that magic sword of his really does seem to possess a terrifying power, greater than he ever thought. Noijil can't argue against that, and even as the first Prime Minister, he can recognize Leviathan's power. Without wasting any time, the Emperor calls Cruz once again and asks him to bring it out. Cruz follows his orders without a doubt, and as they wait for him to do so, the Emperor tells Noijil that the legends say that the true seal on Leviathan must not be broken under any circumstances. However, perhaps if Noah were to do it, things could go in an entirely different way. Time after that, the day of the knight selection exam finally arrives, and this is the Empire's largest annual event. The official name of the nation everyone calls the Empire is actually actually the Mir's Empire, and Mirs is an ancient word meaning warrior. In the Mir's Empire, a nation of warriors, military might is the one and only path to merit-based success, and that success is decided by the knight selection exam. The exam draws the attention of many in the empire, but this year in particular sees a prince personally serving as the head judge, a first in history. People have gathered at the venue in droves for a chance to see him. Noah is sitting at a table, peacefully enjoying a cup of tea, as the examinee number 20 approaches him. As soon as the man raises his sword, Leviathan reacts to the hostility, and Noah's ring instantly creates a shield to protect him. The examinee keeps trying to hit him multiple times, but the shield doesn't budge, and his sword ends up breaking. That makes him fail the exam, and everyone is sure that this is an impossible task, because no one can even lay a finger on the wise prince. Zoe brings him another cup of tea, and the emperor observes everything from the palace's balcony. Cruz tells him that this year's exam is considered far more exciting than those of past years. The emperor clarifies that what's important is the outcome, because the knight selection exam is for choosing worthy soldiers, and he looks forward to seeing what sort of fighter Noah will choose. After a lot of failed exams, the examinee number 152 comes forward, and this time, it's a powerful mage. After reciting a spell, the man attacks Noah with powerful burning flames that swallow him whole. He ends up exhausted after that, though, and to his bad luck, Noah is completely unharmed, being protected by a strong barrier. The man falls defeated, knowing that he failed the exam, but Noah simply takes another sip of his tea, noticing that the sun will be setting soon, and he has seen no particularly noteworthy candidates today. The host announces that the next test will be the last of the day, so a woman approaches Noah and mentally prepares herself before drawing her sword. She takes a deep breath, and then her expression shifts to determination, something Noah instantly notices. When she lunges at him with her sword, Noah's shield activates, but the tip of her sword manages to get through it, so she doesn't give up, saying that something like that won't stop her. The woman thrusts with her sword, using more force this time, until she manages to break through the shield entirely, turning it into pieces. Her sword ends up going through Noah's chair, slightly injuring his shoulder, which really upsets the public. The woman suddenly realizes that she has injured the prince, and she immediately tries to apologize, but the guards suddenly hold her down. Everyone is sure that law is going to come down hard on her for wounding the prince, but that's when Noah suddenly orders the guards to let her go. Once the woman is released, much to everyone's surprise, Noah approaches her and asks her what her name is. The woman keeps her head down and introduces herself as Shirley Grants, and she's instantly surprised when Noah informs her that she has passed the exam. Everyone is stunned into silence at his sudden decision, and Noah explains that he didn't name his standards, but she's clearly an instant pass, and that's his final decision. No one can believe that he's forgiving the woman who wounded him just like that, and that makes them believe further in his generosity. Once they're at Noah's mansion, he notices Shirley's fine armor and asks her if she owns it. Shirley affirms this, saying that it has been handed down in her family for generations. That aside, she decides to ask him what he meant when he said that she passed, wanting to know what her sentence is. Noah assumes that she means her sentence for wounding him by mistake, and clarifies that there is no such thing, because he told her to attack him. Seeing that she's not very convinced, he asks her to stand and use that thrust on him again. Shirley hesitates, but Noah tells her that if she's a knight, then she has to follow his orders. Shirley quickly grabs her sword and stands up after hearing that, taking a deep breath to focus on her attack once again. Noah smiles at her determination, and as soon as she attacks, his shield activates again. However, this time, despite how hard she tries, his shield doesn't budge at all, making it impossible for her to break it. Noah quickly withdraws his shield, saying that this is what he could have done if he had really wanted to block her attack in the exam. That's why she didn't wound him by mistake, since he simply allowed her to. Noah explains that a knight's job is to follow orders, so he wanted to see if she could execute his orders faithfully. After all, he doesn't need a knight who's going to hold back for fear of him. She came at him in earnest twice, even after wounding him, so she definitely has what it takes. Shirley is clearly surprised, realizing just how strong his resolve was all this time. Without hesitation, she kneels before him, swearing her undying loyalty to him for the rest of her life. That's an exaggerated gesture Noah has seen in plays, and he knows that it's not formally recognized, but it gets her intent across, so he accepts it. He quickly checks his stats, noticing that as far as people go, Shirley has raised his stats the most. Zoe then walks into the room with Good Croy, the Emperor's doctor, and Noah thinks that this is a bit much, since his wound is not a big deal. After the doctor examines his body, he mentions that the strike didn't hit any bones or organs, thankfully. Shirley is clearly relieved, and explains that she's impressed that a cut could be treated in that way, because there are no doctors in her village. Noah asks her what she does when someone's sick and injured in that case, and Shirley tells him that they have their elder pray for them or exorcise the root of their illness. As he continues treating Noah's wounds, the doctor mentions that that's quite common in poor villages. Noah mentions that the quickest way to become a doctor is to start as an apprentice. That's why he decides to give Shirley her first official order as his knight, saying that he wants her to bring the most clever, hard-working people from her village to him. He then asks Good to take a few of them as his apprentices, saying that he will cover all expenses. Shirley is clearly very surprised, and Noah asks her her to bring him anyone up to the task of being a doctor to examine villagers. She immediately bows to thank him, and Noah is taken off guard by her gesture, so he informs her that knights don't bow like that, and she needs to brush up on knightly etiquette. Despite his warning, Shirley simply bows at him again without thinking before he leaves. She spends the night in the mansion, and the next morning, Shirley puts her armor back on, ready to work as a knight. Zoe runs into her and asks her if she slept well, but Shirley confesses that she didn't since she was in an unfamiliar room. She mentions that even the servants' quarters are luxurious under a prince, apparently. Zoe just chuckles at that, and she decides to walk with her until they run into a group of maids excitedly talking about something. She asks Reina, one of the maids, what's going on, and she explains that they were just imagining what sort of lady might become their master's bride. That takes Zoe by surprise, and Shirley mentions that Noah is only 6 years old. Reina tells her that she's very naive for thinking that way, and explains that the other princes were married before they turned 15. One of the maids mentions that he could marry the daughter of Anjou of Almeria, since they're in Noah's fief. The other maids agree with her, saying that she would definitely be a good fit. Zoe is clearly uncomfortable with their conversation, since she considers it very rude. Another maid suddenly speaks, saying that that's just how loved the prince is, and she has seen all the cafes that have sprung up on the street in front of the house. It's because so many girls gather there, hoping to see the prince, or if they're very lucky, to catch his eye. Reina mentions that Evelyn says all the time that there is no prince anywhere who's kinder than Noah, and she knows that Zoe loves him herself. Shirley is a little surprised by that, and Zoe quickly tries to deny it, but Reina calls her a liar, saying that she even started studying magic lately. Zoe nervously tells her that she misunderstands, and explains that she just wants to be useful to him, and she's happy just to be able to serve him. She quickly excuses herself and leaves before they tease her any further, but all the maids simply think that she's just so cute. Shirley is left thinking about that for a moment, but she wastes no time and goes to Noah's office to be by his side as his knight. They soon receive a visit from another knight who informs Noah that the knight selection exam is complete, so he's here to deliver the report on this year's knight selection exam. He mentions that thanks to his screening method, all of this year's new knights are excellent, and the knights have expressed their gratitude. Noah signs the report after reading it, and asks the knight to tell them that he's grateful for their help in running it as well. He then asks Shirley to see their guest out, which kind of surprises the knight. Once they're outside, Shirley suddenly kneels before the knight before he leaves, thanking him for taking the trouble to pay them a visit. That takes him by surprise again, so he decides to inform her that they're both knights, which means such formality is unnecessary. Shirley quickly stands up and apologizes, and the knight quickly understands that Noah sent her to see off this lowly knight as part of her training. He decides to give her a word of advice as her senior before leaving, and tells her that she can't go wrong if she sticks with Noah, so she has to work hard. Shirley takes his words seriously, and one night she accompanies Noah during a ball. Alice is singing for them there, and Byron and his daughter approach Noah to greet him. Cindy thanks him for inviting her here, and Byron decides to congratulate him on the success of the knight selection exam. Noah reminds them that this party is to show his thanks to the two of them, so they shouldn't waste all their time with him and go enjoy themselves. Before they leave, though, Noah tells Byron that everyone here are merchants with deep ties to the 13th prince's house. Byron quickly understands what he really means and tells him that he will go and cultivate some friendships in that case. Noah applauds Alice as soon as her song ends, and all the public follows along. Alice smiles, and Noah is glad to see that she's content. But Zoe suddenly approaches him with a letter, saying that she wasn't sure if she should pass it along, but it is addressed to him. Noah immediately has a bad feeling about it, so he decides to go to a private place to discuss it, since there's nothing written on it. Zoe explains that the guard at the door said that the person who delivered it ran away, and it may contain classified information, so she brought it just in case. Noah tells her that she made the right decision, and decides to open the letter right there. Both Zoe and Shirley get alarmed, saying that it might be dangerous to do that. Noah reassures them, placing a hand on Leviathan to indicate that there is no danger. Once he opens the letter, he mentions that it seems there is some unsettling movement among the remnants of the Almerian rebels. He doesn't know if they still haven't given up, but whoever delivered this letter has gone back to investigate undercover. Noah easily figures out that it was the soldier from back then, the same one who informed him of the rebellion not long ago. Zoe remembers the man as well, and mentions that he did seem to admire him a great deal. He found out later that Noah had already learned of the rebellion, but had accepted his warning without mentioning so. Shirley then assumes that he's doing this to repay his debt, which is really impressive. Noah clarifies that this is actually bad, because playing pretend spy when he has no training is way too dangerous, and if he's exposed, he'll be killed for sure. His brother Henry should still be near there, so he'll send a message asking him to stop this. A few days later, Noah receives a letter back, but the news aren't good at all, and just as he expected, the man was exposed and then tortured. He should have just talked, but he refused, so they showed no mercy, and now he's unconscious. His brother unit got him out, but he has not woken up yet, so it's clear that he's in very bad shape. Noah feels terrible because he knows that this is his fault, since if he had realized it sooner, he could have stopped all of this. If he had put the Emperor's information as a weapon lesson into practice, everything would have been different. Noah decides not to dwell on it any further, and asks Zoe to send Almeria a message, saying that he will spare no expense, but they can't let that man die. Whatever he needs, be it money or a doctor, letter, they just have to tell him, and he'll make it happen. Zoe immediately leaves to send the letter, and Noah is still very affected by what happened. A single piece of information is not worth the sacrifice of such a deeply loyal man, so he can't let him die. Soon after that, Noah decides to go to the market with Shirley, who's clearly in awe, seeing things she's never seen before. Noah reminds her that she's on the job right now, so she shouldn't get distracted. Shirley quickly focuses back on the task and walks by his side, asking him if he's here to buy something. Noah tells her that he wants to buy something to thank his brother Henry for suppressing the rebellion and for his letter. He decides to visit Alan's shop to find a gift, and he informs him that he received a shipment he's sure he'll appreciate. With a clap of his hands, a group of employees starts bringing different kinds of treasures and expensive jewelry. Despite the great amount of things they bring, Noah is only interested in one thing, something that's covered with a piece of fabric. Even though he doesn't know what it is, it surely doesn't feel the same as the others. Alan praises him for being sharp as always, since he figured it out with one look. The employees take the piece of fabric off, displaying a fine statue of the goddess made out of glass. Noah approaches the piece of art, saying that he didn't know they could make things like this out of glass. Alan explains that it was left behind by the uncommonly skilled artisan, Lindsay. As it is a lost art now, only 2 goddess statues like this still exist. Noah takes a closer look, and then decides to take it, asking him if 10,000 rien is enough. Alan tells him that it is more than enough, so Noah gives him a bag with a little more than 10,000 rien, saying that the extra is his reward for showing him such a fine piece. Oscar suddenly walks into the room, saying that when he came into the store, they told him that he was here. Alan welcomes him to the store, and Shirley bows again without thinking, since he's the 8th prince. Oscar notices the glass goddess statue, and he instantly knows that it's Lindsay's. Alan confirms it, saying that there are only 2 in existence, and he found the second. Oscar mentions that he has the other one, and as soon as he hears that, Noah decides to grab the statue, making it fall and break on the floor. Everyone freaks out for a moment, but Noah reassures Alan, saying that the payment is still his. He even gives him another bag of money for the trouble, and asks him to spread the rumor that the second goddess statue was found, but it was broken. Oscar is clearly impressed, because this will greatly raise the value of his goddess statue. Noah mentions that when it comes to treasure, the fastest wins, and it may be disrespectful to Lindsay, but if it makes his more valuable, then it's fine. There's a big difference between just 1 in existence and 2, after all. Oscar tells him that he didn't achieve that kind of mastery until he was an adult with his own fief. He finally leaves, saying that he'll thank him later, and Noah decides to choose a different gift. Alan gladly accepts, saying that he still has many more to choose from. Once they leave the shop, Shirley remains unusually silent, so Noah asks her what's in her mind. She explains that it's been nothing but surprises since she started serving him, especially today. She understands his reasoning, but to destroy such a treasure simply took her off guard. Noah tells her that it was only an object, and real treasures are nothing like that. It's more like those who risk their lives to bring him information, those who work their hardest to live up to his expectations, and those who swear loyalty to him and dedicate their all to being useful in any way they can. Noah clarifies that the real treasures are people, and that includes her, because she seems to have learned a lot about him in the past few days. Shirley is left speechless at that, because Noah is like the benevolent rulers she's seen in plays, and that's why she decides that she will follow him for the rest of her life. Noah continues thinking about what Oscar said about having his own fief as an adult, and decides that he wants to keep collecting treasures until he reaches that point too. 6 years later, Noah is now 12 years old, and all his subordinates and maids are still as loyal to him as always. While he's having breakfast, one of the newer maids, Gigi, seems to be distracted by what's going on outside. She mentions that the line of people bringing his birthday gifts still hasn't ended, and it's been 3 days. Noah doesn't seem fazed by that, and Zoe tells her that it lasted a full week last year. That takes Gigi by surprise, and she loses her composure for a moment. So Noah explains that he can't just receive them and be done with it. The item received and its sender needs to be recorded in detail, which is quite time-consuming. He's sure Evelyn will take care of everything just fine though, so he doesn't worry about it. Gigi is still pretty surprised by this, so Zoe reminds her that she's on the job right now, and she has to focus. Noah is now 12 years old, and he has been recognized for fully mastering the magic sword Leviathan. By direct imperial order, he is stationed at the Ministry of Military Affairs, which presides over the Imperial Army. Serving as its minister is Henry, the 4th Imperial Prince. Noah decides to meet him after breakfast, and Henry tells him that he wanted to ask his opinion. He explains that they have received an imperial command to have his direct subordinate, Rice Keiki, lead a force to suppress a rebellion at the southern border. If those barbarians are shown any compassion, they get cocky, so they're to dispatch a regular army to show them how much greater their strength is. Noah looks at Rice, knowing that aside from his many acts of valor, he's more than talented enough to lead an army, and even among all of his brother's knights, he is exceptional. He asks him to tell him just one thing, and that is how many soldiers there truly are. Rice freezes at that, so Noah repeats his question, asking him how many soldiers he'll be leading. Henry doesn't understand Noah's question, so he quickly gets defensive and asks Rice what he's hiding. Rice feels cornered at this point, so he immediately kneels and bows until his forehead touches the floor to show them how sorry he is. Noah tries to reassure his brother, saying that it isn't a serious matter. He explains that Imperial forces receive funding funding from the Ministry of Military Affairs based on how many soldiers are registered. That's why it's common for generals to register non-soldiers, such as merchants and collaborators, and keep the excess funding for themselves. Rice apologizes once again, confirming his accusation, which only further infuriates Henry. Noah asks him to wait, and he asks Rice to stop cowering, saying that it's within a general's authority to add new soldiers. He clarifies that he's not trying to place blame, because normally that would be fine, and registering soldiers in name only can serve as a deterrent. Henry agrees, knowing that sometimes it's better to say they have an army of 100,000, even if that isn't the actual number. He admits that Noah understands these matters well, so he's brilliant, as always. Noah tells him that this occasion is different because the Emperor's order was for a sweeping victory, and that's why he asked about the extent of his embellishment. Rice nervously decides to answer him honestly, saying that they are truly around 2,000. Noah simply asks him to make sure he can actually supply that many, in that case. He then decides to write a letter, and asks him to take it to the Ministry of Military Affairs, because they'll supply enough to cover 2,000 more as miscellaneous expenses, and the excess can be his. Rice is taken by surprise, but Noah simply asks him to take it, and in return, he warns him that he will not tolerate defeat. Rice accepts his order without a doubt, and Henry mentions that that was quite a masterful usage of the carrot and stick. Once they leave, Henry tells him that he still hasn't experienced war, and Noah knows that it's true. Even at age 12, he's still at level 1, and that's the rule of the imperial family. Many royal babies die prematurely, meaning they don't survive long after birth, which is officially attributed to an epidemic, but most of them are identified as murder by poison by those competing for more power. Either way, a prince is a valuable living heir, so they aren't permitted to go to battle until they've grown to adulthood, except by imperial order. Henry reminds him that he's 12 years old now, so it would look better if he got some experience before he starts ruling his fief. Noah simply tells him that if the Emperor orders him to go, he'll go at any time, but Henry mentions that he has a magic sword, so he doubts he would have much difficulty. Noah then asks him when his first campaign was, but before Henry can respond, the carriages abruptly stop when a little girl gets in the way. She desperately asks them for help, and a bunch of kids come out of an alley, also escaping from a group of mercenaries. One of them grabs the little girl by the hair and complains about her for running, saying that she's nothing but trouble. The other mercenaries quickly catch the rest of the kids, but Noah suddenly gets out of the carriage and asks them to stop. None of them recognize him, so they only see him as a brat and ask him to keep his nose in his own business. Noah ignores that and simply asks them where their registration is, because they surely know that unregistered slave trading is a serious crime under imperial law. The mercenaries feel cornered, which pushes them to resort to violence, but before any of them can get their hands on him, Noah summons Leviathan in his hand. With no hesitation, he slashes his magic sword against each one of the mercenaries, taking them down in a matter of seconds. All the people around observe everything in awe, because he handled himself like a real swordmaster. Noah withdraws his sword and approaches the kids to see if they're all right, wanting to confirm if these men are underground slave traders. The little girl confirms this in tears, saying that they said that she and the other kids would be worth good money. Before Noah can say anything else, an old man comes out of the alley and explains that he makes his living off of kids like the ones he sees there. The man refuses to tell him his name, saying that he works for the first prince, Gilbert. Noah hesitates because not only does that man know who he is, but he's threatening him not to meddle because he has Gilbert's backing. Quite a good number of citizens are watching the whole thing, so the man tells him that he doesn't want to make waves here and asks him to just pretend he never saw any of this. Noah asks Henry if he knows this man, and Henry lets him know that he has no idea who he is. Since none of them know that man, Noah uses Leviathan's authority to make him submit in an instant. Once the man collapses, Noah complains about the nerve of this scoundrel to falsely claim he serves the first prince. He tells everyone that that man may have fooled others, but he and his brother will not be fooled. All the citizens soon understand the situation, and some of them start recognizing Noah as the songstress Alice's patron, the wise prince. Noah orders to apprehend these men and take them to the first prince's estate, and to explain that they are scoundrels who falsely claim to work for Gilbert. The guards immediately follow his orders, and Noah also asks them to bring the children to his mansion for now, because he'll hear their stories later. Once it's over, Henry praises him for handling everything so brilliantly, and Noah simply tells him that he's glad that it all worked out. After all, if they did work for Gilbert, he couldn't kill them, but if he'd left them to their own devices, the people would think he allowed underground slave trading to happen. That's why it's best if he made them out to be fakes and let Gilbert handle them himself. Henry soon understands his reasoning and admits that the way he does things always surprises and amazes him. That night, Dylan approaches Noah during dinner to give him some information, and Henry asks him what it is. Noah informs him that a messenger of the first prince was here, and he thanked him for catching these men. He interrogated the slave traders, and they were indeed falsely claiming Albert's name to run their business. He intended to send them to court as soon as tomorrow, but they took their own life with poison while his back was turned. Noah can't help but feel a little frustrated for a moment, and he knows that Henry is thinking the same, which is that the lizard has shed its tail. He mentions that Gilbert ordered those men to run the underground slave trade, and Henry explains that he has absorbed himself in acquiring shops, buying private states, and senseless activities like that for a long time. Noah says that they can't really blame him because Gilbert may be the first prince, but he's a concubine's son son, so he can't succeed the throne. Perhaps to vent his frustration, he's looking for something he can do without succeeding the throne, and the slave trade and private estates are just proxies. Henry is shocked that he even knows that, and once again, he mentions that he never ceases to amaze him. Noah is kind of surprised that he's so impressed, and he tells him that anyone could figure it out with a bit of thought. Henry is sure that it's not like that, and admits that this whole thing nauseated him, but he feels a bit better now. Sometime later, Noah meets with the kids and informs them that he has moved some strings, so none of them will ever be sold, and they're all free now. The kids seem a little lost even after the news, and Noah quickly figures out that they have nowhere to go. The little girl from before explains that she was sold in exchange for money to buy this year's seed rice. The kid next to her says that he was sold to pay for his mother's funeral, and the other kid says that his family simply wanted one mouth less to feed. None of them have a home to return to, and with parents like that, Noah knows that if they did go home, they'd just be sold again. That's why he tells Dylan that he'll take them in, so he wants him to find them jobs and places to sleep wherever available, and if any of them want to study, he must help them do it. Dylan accepts his orders without a doubt, and the little girl asks him if he's going to buy them. Noah approaches the kids with a smile and clarifies that he's not buying them, so if they want to leave, they're free to do so at any time. However, he warns them that the only thing he won't tolerate is betrayal. The kids are just as confused as before, so Noah wonders if that is too difficult for them. Dylan simply asks them to be grateful for the prince's kindness and do the best they can. Each one of the kids thank Noah before leaving with Dylan, and Shirley observes the whole scene, remembering Noah's words, saying that people are treasures. Noah remembers something just then, so he meets with Evelyn soon after, who informs him that all of his birthday gifts have been handled without incidents. He tells her that there is no need to report that because it is already apparent. Leaving that aside, Noah hands her an envelope, saying that he brought this for her. Evelyn grabs the envelope, and Noah explains that it's her dismissal because he'd like her to be the administrator of a small region within Almeria. The information takes Evelyn by surprise, and he tells her that now she's also a proper government official. An administrator is a key office, also popularly known as a magistrate, and this is a major promotion for a maid. The fief that Noah received from the emperor is vast, so it would be impossible for him to rule over it all himself. That's why he has assigned administrators to various regions to act as his proxies. Noah tells Evelyn that he has been watching her for many years, and she's the most clever of his maids. He felt that just taking care of guests at this mansion is a waste of her talents, and that's why he took this decision. Evelyn hesitates and tells him that she would rather keep working for him than go out there and move up in the world. Noah clarifies that he already knows that, but he assures her that she can and will grow. If she works for him as an administrator, it will be known that he, the one who appointed her, is an excellent judge of people. That's why he wants her to leave this mansion and work for him. Evelyn thinks about it for a moment, and the second she understands that this is for his sake, she gladly accepts. After she leaves, Shirley can't keep her excitement to herself, saying that the way he puts people to use is nothing like how the first prince does. Noah quickly cuts her off and warns her that that's not something she should say aloud. Shirley immediately apologizes, but even after Noah leaves, she still thinks that he really is amazing. Soon after that, Noah meets with the emperor, who tells him that he's heard the story already, and he managed to defend Gilbert's honor. Noah assures him that it was coincidental, and he merely captured people who were breaking the law. Deep down, he's surprised that his brother reported it himself, which is actually smart, because instead of keeping secrets, he's made it appear as if his hands are clean. The emperor asks him to remind him what kind of crime is underground slave trading. Noah explains that in cases of unregistered slave trading, the ringleader's dominance arm is to be severed, and any others involved are drafted into military service. The first prime minister confirms it, so the emperor asks him if he was hurt in any way, because he heard the criminals flew into a rage and attacked him. Noah tells him that he was able to turn the tables on them, thankfully, so he's completely unharmed. The emperor isn't surprised at all by this, and he mentions that since it's him, he didn't even need to ask. Had it been himself, he would have been undercover, so he may have been defeated while debating whether to reveal his identity. The first prime minister tells him that something like that would amount to a crime against the imperial family, punishable by death. Most people in the audience laugh at that, but Noah quickly disagrees, saying that under imperial law, if the criminal doesn't know the emperor's identity, there is no crime against the imperial family, and it is treated merely as assault. The sudden silence in the room makes him wonder if he went too far with that statement, because what is or isn't considered rude to say to the emperor is a delicate matter. If he was merely being hypothetical, perhaps he shouldn't have pointed out his mistake. It is always best to speak the truth, but not when it makes a prime minister look bad. Noah considers apologizing for a moment, but before he can say anything, the emperor starts laughing and tells Noizil that he won the bet. The prime minister accepts his defeat and admits that he underestimated him. Noah is clearly clueless and confused, so the emperor explains that he had a little bet going with the first prime minister. It was a test to see whether or not he could describe the law. He has always known that he was strict and impartial in matters of law, so he was testing that just to make sure. The emperor suddenly stands up and announces that in the name of the emperor, he hereby appoints Noah Ararat their minister of justice. Everyone is surprised by this because now Noah is the second minister prince after the fourth prince. All the audience cheers for him, and Noah is simply too stunned to speak, since he really wasn't expecting that. All he did was answer the way he always does, and he was made minister of of Justice. He wonders if he's making too much of this, or if there was something else behind this decision. That night, Noah decides to enjoy another one of Alice's presentations, and everyone in the public can see why she's the most popular songstress in the Empire right now. She has a really beautiful voice, and it makes them feel like their hearts are being cleansed. Noah manages to hear their comments and realizes that maybe it's inelegant to think about anything else right now, so he decides to enjoy the show. Meanwhile, Zoe and the maids say goodbye to Evelyn before she finally leaves, and the kids enjoy a good meal after a while Dylan takes care of them, like Noah asked him to. Shirley continues training to be a better knight, and Albert is certainly still scheming something else even after all that happened. The first Prime Minister meets the Emperor in private that night to inform him that it seems the report was indeed true. The Emperor doesn't seem surprised by this, so he just tells Noijul that he will let him handle it, because it looks like time will wait no longer. The next day, Noah heads to the Ministry of Justice and meets Vinny Ozzy, the Vice Minister of Justice and his number 2. Noah notices how young he is, and he's sure that he's still on the rise, so he asks him what his duties are, wanting him to explain it to him. Vinny tells him that he has 2 primary duties, and the first is the coordination of courthouses across the Empire. Their ministry also tries many cases that occur in the capital, and as with the rebellion 6 years ago, it is customary for the ministry or the Emperor himself to judge those who commit serious crimes such as insurrection. Noah easily understands that, in other words, the ministry also functions as a common courthouse. Knowing this, he asks him if he tries cases as well, and Vinny clarifies that it depends on the case. Without hesitation, Noah suddenly asks him how much he receives in bribes, and Vinny nervously tells him that he doesn't do such a thing. Noah clarifies that he's not trying to force him into admitting guilt, but he only wants to know the real story, and he'll forget as soon as he leaves this room. Vinny understands his reasoning and tells him that he personally doesn't accept many bribes, just a few hundred rien annually. After all, he has a rule, and those beneath him accept at least 10 times that much. His rule is that he does not accept bribes in cases of murder, because it is too easily exposed. If the accuser bears a grudge, he could become a target for revenge, leading to irreparable damage. Vinny clarifies that he accepts bribes only in cases that could easily go in either direction. Without a word, Noah signs a document and gives it to him, saying that assuming he takes 500 rien in a year, he'll give him 5,000, 10 times that. In return, he will not accept bribes at all while he's here, because he wants to live up to the Emperor's expectations, and he wants him to help him do so. Vinny is clearly surprised by this, and mentions that he can see why the Emperor gave him the title of the Wise at age 6 and appointed him Minister Prince of Justice. He places the document on the desk and assures him that he doesn't need extra money, so he'll stop accepting bribes. Noah knows that he should be suspicious of ulterior motives, but after checking the change in his stats, he decides to trust him and count on him. Later that night, Oscar arranges a grand celebration for Noah and tells him that he's really happy, because after their brother Henry, he's the second Minister Prince in all of the Emperor's 50-year reign. Noah asks him why the Emperor appointed them as Minister Princes, and Oscar tells him that it's probably because he's so dear to him. Noah can't completely rule that out though, because in Henry's case, he had the legitimate reason of suppressing the rebellion. He, on the other hand, doesn't have that kind of record, so maybe it's natural to conclude that the Emperor is showing him favoritism. Noah decides to ask him if he's aware that the Empire nearly collapsed at one point, and Oscar confirms it. It happened because of the Empire's system of choosing a crown prince to rule. Because the Emperor's successor is determined at birth, the princes who were not the crown prince idled their lives away, and domestic stability was drastically shaken. Following introspection, the Empire now grants every prince his own fief, and ensures they get a proper education. Oscar asks him what that has to do with this, and Noah mentions that appointing him minister goes beyond education, in his opinion. The realization hits Oscar right away, and he can't hide his shock as he suddenly stands up, asking if the Emperor wants to make him crown prince. Everything goes silent after that, and Noah tells him that he doesn't know for sure. If he's merely doting on him, then there's no problem, but that's most likely not the case. Oscar just then receives information from his butler, and tells Noah that he was right. He explains that he received a report from a eunuch he's bought off, and apparently, the Emperor intends to name the Minister Prince of Finance at tomorrow's morning assembly. Noah is surprised by this, but Oscar leaves that matter aside and reminds him that they're here to celebrate him and toast his intuition. Just as they toast to that, the first Prime Minister informs the Emperor that 167 were arrested, including Keats. They intended to pressure the Emperor into abdicating and, once he was deposed as Emperor, have the Crown Prince assume the throne. Noijul mentions that they confessed to the very plot their intel indicated. The Emperor sighs, saying that he's been the Crown Prince for 30 years of his 50-year reign, so he supposes that he can wait no longer. Noijul asks him to bear in mind that there is no evidence of the Crown Prince's involvement in this incident. Of course, the Emperor tells him that he's aware, so he won't do anything to Albert. This Keats man will be executed, and that will be the end of it. Leaving that aside, he asks what became of the incident with Oscar, and Noijul informs him that he has just sent out a eunuch who is friends with the prince. However, it seems like he was aware of the situation already, since Noah was with him as well. The Emperor has no doubt that it was Noah who caught on to his intentions in that case. Noijul confirms that it was like that, according to the report, and the Emperor expected as much, saying that Noah is remarkable as ever. He says that Gilbert, on the other hand, is no no good, and Albert is no good either. So now he wonders who's worthy of succeeding him. Whether it's Henry, Oscar, or Noah, any of them will do as long as they can overcome his trial. The next day, Vinny informs Noah about the leader and accomplices in the attempted insurrection, and of course Noah knows that they're all people close to Albert, including his confidant, his former tutor, and his knights. Anyone would conclude that this was a revolt led by the Crown Prince's faction. As for whether Albert had a hand in this or not, under imperial law, if one of the imperial family commits a crime, there are provisions that ensure their penalty is light. However, there is one exception, which is insurrection. Any member of the imperial family who is involved in an insurrection is to be cut in half at the waist, be they leader or accomplice. They face the same sentence if they are aware of the scheme and fail to report it to the emperor. Given how many of his people are involved, there is no way Albert didn't know about this. Regardless of this, the Crown Prince's insurrection and execution would be a massive scandal that shakes the very foundation of the empire. Noah asks Vinny what the emperor has said, and Vinny informs him that he said to state the relevant law and to punish those involved accordingly. Noah easily understands the emperor's intentions, so he decides that he will now pass judgment. Soon enough, he meets with the emperor and tells him that he has decided how to sentence the insurgents. From among those who are arrested, the leader will be cut in half at the waist and the accomplices will be executed. He also mentions that the executions will be carried out as soon as they are sentenced. Noah knows that the fact that the emperor limited it only to those arrested must mean that he currently has no intention of bringing Albert into this. That means only those on the list will be judged, and he could postpone their deaths until the day of the year when all executions are carried out. However, Albert's involvement could be revealed through a pardon or something similar, so he must execute them as soon as possible. This is all within the bounds of imperial law, so the emperor easily approves his decision. He also tells Cruz that Noah has done well, so he wants to add 1,000 rein to his annual salary. Noah thinks that this is not a feat worthy of a reward, so it's clear that the emperor really didn't want to get Albert involved in this. The emperor approaches him to praise him as always, saying that he's brilliant as usual. He mentions that his hopes for him remain high, so he must keep up the good work. Noah silently agrees and returns to the Ministry of Justice, but Shirley immediately alerts him, knowing that there's something wrong. As soon as he gets out of the carriage, Noah notices some guards lying lifeless on the ground. One of the guards that survived warns him that there are still intruders inside. He passes out before he can say anything else, and Noah's first instinct is to order Shirley to ask his brother at the Ministry of Military Affairs to send for reinforcements. However, he suddenly hesitates and thinks twice about it, taking the timing of this into account. Noah instantly changes his mind and draws out his magic sword, ordering Shirley to gather their allies. He asks her not to let anyone inside or outside the mansion other than him, even the other princes. Shirley follows his order, and Noah immediately runs into the mansion, wielding Leviathan. He soon finds a hallway full of fallen guards, but he doesn't stop running and asks all officials to stand down. Noah enters a room and finds one of the insurgents taking another life, and he doesn't hesitate to fight him. The intruder jumps at him with his sword, but Noah tells him that he's not good enough, and in a matter of seconds, he makes a cut to all of his limbs with Leviathan. Knowing that he's completely cornered, the intruder tries to take his own life, but Noah immediately uses his ring to avoid this. Soon, the rest of the insurgents come into the room to let their comrade know that they're pulling out. When they see Noah, though, they immediately attack him at once, but they're far too slow, and Noah easily takes them down with his sword. He makes sure not to kill them, and uses his ring to keep them from taking their own lives. Just as he's done with all of them, Vinny runs into the room, and he's clearly shocked to see that he defeated them all. Without wasting any time, Noah asks him what the situation is, and Vinny mentions that he can see the casualties among their guards, and all the insurgents were killed. Noah is surprised by this, because that only can mean that they were silenced, and in other words, the intruders are the Crown Prince's men. Knowing this, Noah takes a deep breath and makes a cut on his side with his own sword. Vinny panics, having no idea of what he's doing, but Noah keeps his composure despite the pain and tells him that these 4 intruders did this to him. He then asks him what the heaviest punishment for severely wounding a prince is. Vinny soon understands what he wants to do and informs him that the heaviest punishment is execution in all cases and by summary judgment. With no hesitation, Noah asks him to do that immediately, and Vinny carries out his order without a doubt. Soon after that, his maids take care of him while 2 doctors treat his wound, stopping the bleeding. After a while, Vinny enters the room and informs him that the executions have been carried out as he asked. Noah says that this whole matter is over in that case, which is good. Vinny agrees and tells him that he never ceases to amaze him. Noah simply sighs in relief because with only one misstep, the whole empire would have been on the rocks, all because of the Crown Prince. The next day, the emperor summons him to the throne hall, but tells him that there is no need for formalities since he is wounded. Noah thanks him for his consideration and confesses that he could not be more ashamed of his failure. The emperor reassures him, saying that it doesn't matter because he is not solely to blame. Still, he mentions that he finds it hard to believe that they wounded a man of his caliber and asks him if they were truly so capable. Noah had already figured that the emperor would ask something like that, so it doesn't surprise him. Given his intelligence network, he probably already knows that he gave himself this wound. That's why he decides to tell him that he believes that strength is not solely dependent on one's skill with the sword. After all, no matter how talented one is, he can falter if his mental fragility is taken advantage of. The Emperor easily understands his reasoning and tells him that he's truly a fine son, a son he would be proud to present to all. Noah assumes that the Emperor appears to understand the amount of thought he put into handling that feat. The Emperor confesses that he only wishes all his sons were like him, and that brings a smile to Noah's face. They go for a walk after that, and the Emperor mentions that among the emperors who come to be known as great leaders, 9 out of 10 tarnish their reputation later in life. Noah is surprised by that comment and wonders if he is talking about the Crown Prince's insurrection. Their emperor led this nation into a golden age like none it had known before, so he will most certainly be described as a great leader in history books. However, Noah is aware that if that insurrection had been successful, they would say that he grew senile in his old age and couldn't control his own sons. Clearly, the Emperor no longer trusts the Crown Prince, and the only reason he won't do anything about it now is that the very act of forsaking the Crown Prince would tarnish his reputation in his later years. Noah decides to tell the Emperor that he has a favor to ask, and mentions that he appointed Henry, Oscar, and himself minister princes. However, as that in itself is a first, he fears some aspects of it will be handled poorly somewhere down the line. That is why he would appreciate it if he could appoint someone to coordinate all of them. The Emperor assumes that he is asking for his first prime minister, but Noah clarifies that it's not the case. He explains that, as an example, he could appoint someone above the 3 of them to bring order to all that they do. He is proposing the establishment of a new role known as the Prime Minister Prince, and he would like the Crown Prince to fill that role. The Emperor instantly rejects the idea, saying that it's impossible. He doesn't let him argue and tells him that his wounds aren't healed yet, so he must leave for today. Despite this, as the Emperor walks away, Noah tells him that Albert is a Crown Prince of 30 years, which is why he can understand why his brother would begin to feel so impatient, in which case, the Emperor would still have the final say in all decisions, and he only needs to allow him to emulate him. The Emperor stops for a moment to face him, and tells him that Albury would still rank above the ministers. This would mean that there is a possibility that the Prime Minister dismisses an important matter and it never reaches him at all. Noah explains that to prevent that, each minister prince will have the right to file a direct appeal. If all of them feel equally strongly about the matter, they can bypass the Prime Minister and appeal directly to the Emperor. The Emperor is clearly shocked by this idea, because that prevents the Crown Prince from holding any actual power. It doesn't matter if the Prime Minister Prince's role has any substance, since it will be no more than a mere title. After thinking about it for a moment, the Emperor admits that his plan is remarkable, and that he's totally right. After all, if that will work, then it is the best choice. The Emperor thanks Noah for his counsel, and asks him to consider it delivered to the throne. Noah thanks him for listening, and the Emperor once again tells him that it is truly a shame he wasn't born sooner. Noah remains silent, knowing that the Emperor understood his proposal instantly, which means that he is truly worthy of being called a leader. Preventing the tarnishing of his reputation in his old age will be the best way to ensure his people can live peaceful lives. The Emperor mentions that he must reward him, but money isn't a sufficient reward for such a proposal. That's why he informs Cruz that they're going to the vault, and Noah follows him there. The Emperor then asks him if he discovered that ring he's wearing by his own judgment, and once Noah confirms it, he says that he wants to see that judgment in action. With this in mind, the Emperor asks Noah to choose any one item he likes from the vault. Noah thanks him for the offer and decides to walk deeper into the vault, asking Leviathan to search. Soon enough, the magic sword emits waves throughout the area, and in a matter of seconds, Noah finds something. The Emperor is clearly surprised by how fast that was, and Leviathan guides Noah towards a small box among all the antiques and treasures in the vault. Completely trusting Leviathan's judgment, Noah approaches the small box and grabs it with both his hands. Nothing interesting happens at first, but as soon as he opens the small box, Noah is instantly surrounded by strong flames.